Host time took a little ride down to Sussex County, Delaware, to visit horseman Kyle Moore. The conditioner, along with his wife Amanda and their little guy Camden, welcomed us to the stable for some insight on the racing roster and a couple other equine residents. First, we wanted to start with the basics on how Kyle got involved with the sport.
My grandparents, Jake and Darce Marine, they raced in the 80s and then got out around 86. And then they started back in 99 and I started helping them and I've been going ever since.
Kyle actually began his harness racing journey with ponies. And of course, nowadays, his stable consists of full-sized standardbreds. Well, for the most part. We'll explain that a little later. First, let's talk about a couple of Kyle's favorite racehorses in his barn. We'll begin with Doc Samoleu, a 6-year-old pacer who has finished first or second 6 times out of 11 starts this season.
My grandfather purchased Doc Samoleu from Gary Simpson. I had wanted the horse for a year and a half or so. Something just about him I liked. When my grandfather bought him, I said, well, let me buy half of them. So we ended up buying them together, and then my grandfather passed away. I've loved having him around. He's good with people. He does absolutely nothing wrong, and he's good with my son and everything. He's not the fastest horse by any means, but he's just gritty. He just does his job, and he loves racing. Matter of fact, Doc, when we're feeding at night, if my son walks by, he'll pin his ears just to say, hey, I want you to notice that I'm here. He won't hurt him or anything, but he just wants him to notice that, hey, I'm here, you better pet me when you walk by. He just wants to be noticed. He'll grab your shirt so make sure that you pay attention to him. He just loves attention. He just wants everybody to mess with him nonstop.
Another 6-year-old who was acquired at the same time as Doc Samoleu is I'm in Your Blind Spot. And that Bettor's Delight pacer out of the mare Ombro Tussle not only has a famous full sister, but the pacer also brought Kyle's family a very emotional win this past February.
We purchased I'm in Your Blind Spot at the same time, and come to find out, I didn't know much about the horse. It was just buy one, you got to take the other one too. So I got looking, and I'm in Your Blind Spot. Come to find out, he's a full brother to She Be Stingin', who I'm not sure still owns the world's record for a 3-year-old filly still. But yeah, he's a full brother to She Be Stingin'. I'm in Your Blind Spot, and I think it was a Wednesday I trained him, and I called my grandfather. He was in Florida racing race cars. And I told him how the horse is trained and everything. He said, okay, good. Well, about a half hour later, I got a phone call from my mom and aunt, and they said, you need to hurry up and get here to your aunt's house. Said, your grandfather's fallen out of the truck, and they rushed him to the hospital. Well, we got to my aunt's house, and it was a half hour later, and they said he passed away. So, and I had just talking to him a half hour before all that happened, and he was fine. So Monday rolled around, I'm in Your Blind Spot was in to go. So it was pretty emotional that first start with the horse, and he ended up winning. And matter of fact, I told Russell, I said, the old man was riding with you the whole time, telling you not to screw this one up. So it was pretty emotional.
A retired racehorse trained by Kyle, who became a familiar name in the top ranks, is Emeritus Maximus. He entered the Moore stable in January of 2017 at the age of 7. And then after a couple very successful seasons, the pacer hung up his harness in October 2019. Emeritus Maximus retired with over $600,000 in earnings, and now the son of rock and roll Hanover is standing stud in the first state, breeding 32 mares in his first season.
3 years ago, my grandfather and his business partner claimed Emeritus Maximus together. I did research on the horse and come to find out he had trained down with, or Emeritus Maximus trained down with Captain Treacherous and everything. So, and he was in, I think the week before he was in a 10-claimer, Mike Hall had him, and I told him, I said, look, this horse be worth claiming. So they put him in for 15 and we claimed him, and the horse was, he was just great to be around, and he just went through the ranks. And I think he ended up winning like 2 or 3 Delaware specials, but probably one of my greatest what I think was his best race was when he won in 49 flat at Chester. That was by far my biggest accomplishment, I think, anyway. But he was just an iron, tough horse. I mean, he always had problem with his feet and everything, and he always gave 110%. I think he does miss the track, but he was always one to, he loved the female. I mean, he loved males, females, it didn't matter. He loved them all. So he was definitely full of himself, I'll put it that way. He was always one that would rather stay in the stall. As long as he had hay, feed, and water and could watch the other horses, he would much rather do that anyway. So he was never one to want to go out in the field all the time or stay out. So he loves being in the barn and keep an eye on everything, make sure everything's all right. He's just a pleasure to have around. He's a big bully. He lets you know who the boss is, but he's a big kid at heart too. So he's just a pleasure. I mean, he's just an absolute pleasure to have around and by far a blessing.
And finally, it would be very remiss of us if we didn't introduce you to the small but mighty Tina. She may not be going behind the starting gate at Harrington Raceway or Dover Downs anytime in the future, but she's still very much an asset to the Moore stable.
My grandfather said before he passed away that he was going to get my son Camden a mini horse. Well, he ended up passing away, so grandmother says, I tell you what, see if you can't find a mini horse for him. And needless to say, we found Tina, and she's pretty much the barn mascot now. She's absolute pleasure to have around. She keeps everybody straight in the barn.
And, well, we all need one of those in the barn, right? Thanks so much, Kyle, for a great interview and visit, and best of luck with all of your equines, big and small.